Hello, everyone. Welcome to our next session with DCM Insights, where we're going to go deeper into the consulting subsector and really understand what activator behavior looks like in this specific industry and sector. I am thrilled to have some special guests. We're becoming like best friends over here from DCM Insights, Matt Dixon and Karen Freeman, and from PA Consulting Partner and the UK Consumer Lead, Tom Day. I'm going to kick it over for some quick introductions. Tom, why don't you start us off?
So hi, and thank you for having me. I'm Tom. I sit in the London office. I'm a partner with PA Consulting, and I look after the consumer team here in the UK. It's fun.
And Tom, you have to tell us one fun thing that's not on your LinkedIn profile. You knew this one was coming.
Yeah, I'm growing a massive mustache at the minute, as you can see, which is for Movember. It's all about mental and physical health for men and women. So everybody, check your bits and bobs for lumps and bumps. Talk to your friends. Make sure everyone's doing okay, because everyone is fighting a battle you know nothing about. It's good to be kind. There you go. That's not on my LinkedIn.
Love that. And you even got the pin to show for it. That's
There you
great.
go. This is not a normal, powerful look, no.
Doesn't match the LinkedIn profile. So there you go. Awesome. From the DCM Insights team, Karen, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Right, thank you so much. I'm Karen Freeman. I'm a partner at DCM Insights, and I'm here partly as a researcher and partly as the lead of training programs for the activator profile. And I spent a lot of time on this particular piece of research, and also do lead training for many folks who participate in the activator development system. My fun fact, well, as Matt knows well, I am a complete nerd. So perhaps this is just going to be my bona fides. I know how to juggle. And I, in fact, started a juggling club when I was in high school. So there you go. Not on my LinkedIn profile, probably for a good reason.
You may have to pull out the juggling balls. We'll do that at the end of the session. I go, wrap it up. No, I'm just kidding. That's awesome. All right. And Matt, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Angelica. Appreciate the getting together again with the LinkedIn team. So, Matt Dixon, I am a. It's hard to explain what I do. I think I've used this before. So, those of you who've heard it before, laugh at the joke, please. But I consider myself a sales anthropologist, which is basically that I'm a researcher. I'm not a salesperson. Never been a business developer, but I am a researcher. So, like Karen, I think our paths have crossed many times. On research projects like the Challenger sale and our most recent activator work. We try to bring research-based methods to understand how is client buying behavior changing and what do the best salespeople, or in this case, in consulting, business developers do to grow their relationships, their books of business with clients most effectively. So I'm thrilled to be here. This is exciting new research, and it's awesome to be partnered with LinkedIn and the Sales Nav team, bringing some of this content to the consulting world. So
Great. Awesome. All right. So, well, here's our agenda for today. Matt's going to go a little bit deeper into the research, talk about, again, what driving business development in today's world looks like, and specifically talk about the consulting subsector. So we're going to talk about why now in this industry, is it so critical to change your business development practices? We'll do that for about 20 minutes. And then we are so thrilled to have Tom talk practically what this looks like in his day-to-day. Tom, maybe Tom won't say it, but we know he's an activator. So we're going to talk about how he's really done this at PA Consulting, one of the firms that is leading in terms of having their partners and client-facing professionals really adopt this approach. And Karen is going to, no, not apply your nerdy lens, Karen, but like really apply your research-based lens on that approach. So with that, I'll turn it over to Matt to share the research.
yeah, great. And for those of you who haven't seen it, we put out not too long ago, I think it was maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, in Harvard Business Review, an article that profiles this research, what today's rainmakers do differently. And in that article, we tell just a small piece of Mr. Day's story. We didn't talk about the mustache, but we did talk about some of the amazing things he's doing. So let's carve out some time at the very end here. We'll have Tom tell his story, talk about how he's doing the activator thing, how he's engaging clients differently out in the market. So with that, maybe I'll share some slides and jump in with your permission. All right, here we go. So I'm going to take about 20 minutes or so. I'm going to give you the speed walk through this content. you'll find, I think, that again, this is a story both of how client buying behavior is changing, but also what today's rainmakers, today's top partners are doing differently. And then we'll pull in Tom. We'll hear more of his story at PA Consulting. Karen as well. Didn't share this in the beginning, but also has a fair amount of experience in consulting herself, having led an L&D team globally at McKinsey, and so we'll be able to share some of her perspective about how firms are bringing some of these skills and behaviors and imparting these amongst their partners and associates. So without further ado, let's jump into it. The problem that we were after in the research or trying to answer was this one, or the question, I should say. And this has been an evergreen question, I think, in not just professional services, but in sales organizations around the world. But what is it that our top performing partners do differently? And how can we learn from what they do and export those learnings, those insights to the rest of our partners so that we create a tide that lifts all boats? You know, in most firms, we see that it's typically the top 10 or 20% of partners that drive 80 to 90% of the firm's growth. And again, this has been a challenge that firms have grappled with for a very, very long time. So we could have been talking about this topic, 30 years ago. We may not have had this platform to do so, but we could have been talking about the same question 30 years ago. But we think now is different, that there's an edge to this problem and some urgency to solve it for firms, despite the fact that it's been a problem for a very long time that has gone kind of unsolved in professional services for that period. And this is the problem. So we created a panel of about 100 C-level executives and went out and asked them about how they perceive partners and firms in professional services. And we asked them specifically to respond to the following statement. Provided the firm or the partner we've hired in the past has done good work, to what extent would they be inclined to go back to that same partner or firm again if a new need arose? And as you see here, there is a secular trend towards, I wouldn't say disloyalty, but certainly less loyalty and less sticky relationships as we look out into the future in this professional services market. 5 years ago, these C-level buyers said, yeah, most of them would say we would be inclined to go back to the same partners and firms. If they did good work, we would go back to them again. Today, that's only about 50%, as you can see. And then we asked these buyers to think out about how this would change in the next 5 years. And as you can see, very few of them, slightly more than a third, reported that they would be inclined. Their knee-jerk reaction would be just to hire the same partners and firms again. Instead, most of them are telling us, there's a lot more pressure from procurement, from the organization to more thoroughly vet partners and providers before we sign up for a consulting engagement, a piece of executive search work, an investment banking engagement, another advisory relationship, a piece of legal work or accounting work. We shop the field, we look for the best provider for our needs, and the pursuits and the considerations are much more formalized today than they once were. Now, what of course this means for firms is that they are seeing the implications in their own business. They're starting to see those age-old bonds of, once we're in with a client and we deliver great work, that client will just keep coming back to us. Those bonds are starting to fray in ways that are perhaps irreparable. And they're seeing that, yes, their top partners are figuring out how to sell and develop business into this environment, but their average partners are falling farther and farther behind. So again, an age-old problem, but a problem we think that has a new level of urgency given the less sticky client relationships and this change in client buying behavior that we've been monitoring and tracking over the past few years. So we went out to study this with data. This is a quick snapshot of the data set that we use to produce the findings I'm about to share with you. 23 firms in total that we collected data from, nearly 1,800 partners. We asked all of those partners to go through a 40-minute survey where we tried to capture a really broad sense for how these partners engage in business development and client engagement. Now, each of those firms that participated also nominated a handful of their top performers to participate in in-depth interviews with our team. And those proved to be pretty revealing. The survey told us what they did differently, but the interviews really gave us the color and the thinking and the why and the how they do what they do, some of which I'll share with you over the next few slides. Now, the survey itself, and I apologize for this eye chart here. This is the worst slide I'll show you in the session today. But you see that what we covered in the survey on the left-hand side, about 108 total attributes. So again, trying to cast a very broad net in terms of business development approaches that partners use. We collected a set of control variables as well. So we controlled for differences between, let's say, law in consulting, accounting, investment banking, et cetera, as well as specialty areas within those verticals. We controlled for age, for gender, for geographic market differences. This was a global study, of course. Now, for every single partner that participated in the survey, we asked the firm that they work for, the leadership team of that firm, to assess that partner on their business development effectiveness, their effectiveness overall, their effectiveness landing net new clients, their effectiveness expanding existing clients, cross-selling the breadth of the firm's capabilities, et cetera. That gave us our outcome variable. And then we performed two types of analysis on it. The first, which I'm going to show you the results of here in just a moment, is a factor analysis. That looks for the ways that these variables kind of group together statistically in the model and move together as kind of buckets or categories of variables. Second, we looked at a regression analysis. So how do the things on the left drive the thing in the middle? So different behaviors, time spent characteristics, use of resources, how do those things actually affect business development performance? So I'll show you that second. But first things first, let's share with you the output of the factor analysis. What, in layperson's terms, what came out of this is, in short, that there are really 5 types of partners out there. Now, I'm going to go through these one by one. And of course, every participant on the session today is going to be thinking about which category they fit into, right? And some of you might struggle to place yourself into a category. And I can tell you that's natural because all of us have elements of all 5 of these partner types within us. But every one of the 1,800 partners in our study could be statistically placed into one of these 5. What that means is you may have elements of all 5, but you spike or major in one. There's one primary posture that you take. So think hard about which one you fall into. Now, the other thing I'll point out, and it should be obvious from the page here, we didn't study personality. I think a lot of people will hear these profiles and they will assume these are like personality types, like a DISC framework or a Myers-Briggs framework. That's not what we studied. What we studied were the things that with the right training, coaching, and support from the firm, every partner can get better at. Personality is very hard to change, but skills, behaviors, time spent, those are things that can change. So that's what we're looking at. So let's jump into it. These are our 5 types of partners: experts, confidants, activators, debaters, and realists. Let me share with you just a little bit more detail on each one, as well as a little color commentary. Then I'll get to the punchline, which is how they perform relative to one another. Okay, our first profile is the expert. The expert is kind of the reluctant business developer. This is the person who, in the words of one partner at a law firm, said, "I didn't go to law school to be a salesperson." They're not comfortable doing business development, but it is part of the job when it comes to being a partner, a fee earner in a professional services firm. You've got to not just deliver the business, you've got to produce the business as well. But what this means is that for the expert, because they're reluctant to do business development in a proactive way, they end up being very reactive. They wait for the phone to ring. They wait for that client to find them on the firm website or on LinkedIn and to reach out to them and say, "Hey, we have a specific need for somebody with your expertise." What they do is they hang up a shingle to the market through thought leadership, public speaking, serving on panels, et cetera, to try to signal to the market that, again, they are an expert in a very specific domain. And they hope that when clients have a need that aligns with their expertise, the client will reach out to them and ask for their help. Now, in really practical terms, what this means is that by the time the clients reach out to the expert, they're usually talking to several other professed experts from other firms that, again, claim to be experts in the same exact domain, since nobody owns a domain unto themselves. So they get pulled into a lot of competitive bids. Now, the second profile is our confidant. I think the shorthand description of the confidant is that they are an old school trusted advisor. So they are, that means they build a small cadre of clients, maybe 3 to 5 key clients, and they try to build very deep relationships with those clients. They build these relationships by delivering great client service. They're very client-centric, very responsive to their clients' needs. They also deliver great work product. The confidant's mindset is that as long as I have a great relationship with my clients, not just a business relationship, but even a personal relationship with that client, and I've done great work for them, and I've done whatever they've asked me to do and done it to a very high standard, then I can rest assured that the next time that client has a need, they will come to me. They're not going to make me compete for the business. They're going to come to me automatically. Now, the last note about the confidant is because they've invested so deeply in this small handful of key client relationships, they don't like sharing those relationships with their colleagues for fear that one of their colleagues might come in and, pardon the expression, but screw it up for them, right? They can't afford for that to happen. So they tend to hoard those relationships to themselves. Okay, the third one is the activator. And so I tipped my mid a little bit earlier talking about Tom as an activator. You know who the winning profile is. So I'm surprised when we get to that point next. But the activator is a super connector. So they are very active on platforms like LinkedIn. They're very heavy users of tools like Sales Navigator, but they're also heavy connectors and super connectors when it comes to live events. So these are the people who go to a conference or a firm-sponsored event with a punch list. They're looking at the attendees. They've set up breakfasts and coffees and dinners and lunches and side conversations. They're looking at who's coming and they're trying to target the people that they want to make sure they leave with a business card in the next step, right? I'm going to establish a connection with these people. Now, when they get back to the office, what they're trying to do is activate those connections. So they're trying to work people in their network, whether it was a connection established on LinkedIn or whether it was a connection established in a physical setting like a conference. What I want to do is convert those connections into business conversations, and then some of those conversations will convert into paying client relationships. How do they do that? Well, this is why we chose the term activator. They try to activate those connections by proactively bringing new ideas to those clients. Karen, I don't know if you saw this recent tax court decision in a jurisdiction you operate in, or Tom, I don't know if you saw this piece of M&A news in one of the industries that your firm participates in. This might represent a threat or an opportunity to, I'd love to hop on a Zoom or grab a coffee and talk about this a little bit. Now, when I do that, I'm not looking to charge Karen or Tom for the time. It's not billable work, it's off the clock work, because what I want to do is build some goodwill, and I want to give the client a chance to kick the tires on my skills as an advisor so that when they realize they do have a need and they do want to pay for help, that I am front of mind because I'm the one who brought the idea to them and I gave them a bit of free advice. I paid it forward, if you will. Now, lastly, unlike the confidant, the activator is proactive about bringing their colleagues into a client relationship. So they don't hoard relationships, they open up those relationships. They're not trying to build walls, they're trying to build bridges. The reason they do is quite strategic. They know that in today's client buying environment, it's all well and good if the client is loyal to you personally, if they think you do good work, but it's a much stickier relationship if they see your firm as delivering value across multiple domains and functional areas. So if I can connect my colleagues with my client, the client thanks me for making those introductions. I get the halo benefit, but more importantly, the client thinks twice before they go with a competitor because we're serving them across many parts of their organization. All right, the next one's the debater. Now, the debater, for those of you who know some of the research that we've done in the B2B sales space, might sound kind of familiar. These folks are sharp-elbowed, they're opinionated, they have a different view of the world. They like to debate the client about what's right answer for their business. And what's interesting is that in B2B sales, we found that this is actually a winning posture, this posture to come in and reframe the client's understanding. But what we learned here, and I'm tipping my mid a bit to the results, these folks don't do very well in professional services. And I think the main reason is that it's one thing to push the client's thinking and to be disruptive and provocative if you're selling a piece of software or you're selling medical equipment or other products, if you will. But when you are the product, it can be a really exhausting posture to take with your client. Look, clients tell us, I want my partners to push my thinking. I rely on them to help expand my horizons and help me look around corners and think about what, the things I don't know anything about and think about what's possible. I think outside the box, as I said before. But if every time I sit down with them, they're telling me I'm doing it wrong, it's just a grind. It's absolutely exhausting. Sometimes I just need them to do what we already know we need to do. Okay, the last profile is the realist. Realist is an interesting one. This is a posture that is unique to professional services. And I think for a very specific reason. If you are selling software, you're selling a medical device, you can look at the product, right? You can test its functionality. You can do a proof of concept. You can kick the tires on the product. That is not true when you're selling advisory services like consulting. It's kind of a black box to the client. They're kind of buying on a leap of faith. Yeah, you have a track record. Yes, you have reference clients. Yes, you have a sheet of logos of clients like them you've worked with in the past and outcomes you can lay claim to, but it's very hard to touch and feel advice, right? It's what's in the partner's head effectively. And so I think for this reason, what the realist knows is that every client out there in the professional services buying world has been burned in the past by a partner or firm who's overstated their capabilities, who, if you will, overpromise and underdeliver, or maybe by a firm that's like to send surprise invoices after the engagement is concluded that were well in excess of the client's stated budget. Like everybody has had that experience. So the realist, because they know buying professional services, buying consulting can feel like a black box to the client, they are the opposite of that. They're very transparent. They are absolutely truthful, above board, honest brokers with the client. Now, it's a great posture, and we all want to have that posture. But again, these folks don't do particularly well either. And I think the main reason is that clients see it as a kind of a glass half empty posture. They're much more comfortable saying what they won't do or can't do for the client than what's possible, right? And so sometimes our clients want us to be a bit more aspirational, paint the art of the possible. Don't just tell me what you can't do for me. Okay, let's look at the distribution. Now I'm going to show you, this is just literally when we let the data identify across those 1,800 partners what profile that each partner fits into. Now, this is the overall framework here. Now you see consulting there in the middle, but first let me draw your attention to the top row. This is the distribution across professional services overall. Now, you see it's pretty even, maybe not surprisingly. There's a little bit of a deficit with those debaters. The debater, again, because their posture is one that might work in B2B sales, doesn't really work in a doer-seller world like consulting. So you don't see very many of those folks there. But when you look at the individual breakouts, there's some interesting variations here. So you see in law and accounting, for instance, there's much more of an emphasis on those confidants, those old school trusted advisors. Look at consulting. So all of us on this call today are in consulting. You see the realist is the dominant profile there. And that might be because, again, buying a consulting engagement can feel to the client like a bit of a leap of faith. Are we really going to see the transformation you're promising? Are we really going to see the returns that we're making on these investments? Or is this going to, are you going to leave us holding the bag? Is this going to end up costing 2 to 3x what we budgeted? So you see that profile is more of a select for profile in consulting. And you see some of the other segments here as well in terms of how those profiles populate. But this is merely descriptive data. And while it's academically interesting, I think the reason you all came is to understand who wins and who loses. So let's look at that next. And then we'll kind of wrap things up and go to our fireside chat and Q&A here. All right. When we look at the regression analysis, we find something pretty fascinating. Let me just orient you to the axes here. The horizontal axis refers to profile strength. So what I mean by profile strength is the degree to which a partner demonstrates skills, behaviors, attitudes, time spent characteristics associated with any of those 5 profiles. And it's the strength of that demonstration. So we could be a weak activator or a strong activator. We could be a weak realist or a strong realist. So think about this as the degree of skill demonstration from weak to very strong. The vertical axis is obviously revenue generation. So to help the data make sense, what we did was we picked the 50th percentile partner. So somebody who's right smack in the middle of the normal distribution. They are neither a high performer nor a low performer. They're just right in the middle. And what we're looking at here is what would happen to that average performing 50th percentile partner if they chose to increase their demonstration of the skills, behaviors, attitudes, time spent characteristics associated with each one of those 5 approaches. So if they chose to lean harder into any of those 5 approaches, what would happen? Well, the first thing we see that happens is that 4 of the 5 profiles are negatively correlated with revenue generation. So what these partners are thinking is that by leaning into these approaches, they're actually becoming more effective at business development. They're stepping on the gas, if you will. But in fact, what's happening is they're pumping the brakes on their own personal business development effectiveness. They are producing a lot less revenue than they otherwise could. And remember the distribution from a couple of slides ago. We found that nearly 80% of partners in professional services fall into one of these 4 profiles. So almost 80%, 78% to be precise, of partners have chosen a path, a business development approach that is actually not just unproductive, but counterproductive to their potential revenue generation. Now, if we look at the last one, the activator, what we find is the activator is the only one of the 5 that has a positive statistical correlation with revenue generation. It's a linear correlation. And to put a finer point on this, if you took the average partner and you improved their revenue, or if you will, increase their profile demonstration, their profile strength from weak to strong. If you took them and said, we're going to take you from a weak to a strong activator, you would improve their personal revenue generation by up to 32%, which is a huge number. And if you think about that multiplied across a practice group or across a firm, the numbers get pretty eye-popping, right? So one clear winner here amongst the 5 profiles. Now, this is, again, pretty interesting data and surprising, I think, for many of us, because the other 4 profiles, a lot of the conventional wisdom out there around what great rainmakers do, what great partners do, is kind of woven into some of those underperforming or counterproductive approaches. But what is it that makes the activator so effective? Let's look at that here, and then again, we'll go to our Q&A. Just a very high-level walkthrough of the activator playbook. There were probably about 25 different variables that factored together from our model to describe the activator playbook. But when Karen and the team and I kind of sat back and we looked at this, what we concluded was there were 3 essential elements to being an activator, 3 pillars of the activator playbook. The first pillar is that the activator, unlike the other 4 profiles, has a clear commitment to business development. They schedule time to do business development, if not every week, then potentially every day, right? It's like going to the gym. If I don't get to it in the morning, I'm going to do it at lunch. And if I don't get to it at lunch, I'm doing it in the evening. They don't allow that time to slip. They carve it out. They protect it. Now, this is really interesting for a couple of reasons. One, if you think about the changes in client buying behavior that we're seeing out in the marketplace, having a commitment to business development really means building a robust pipeline of potential client business behind the current clients that you're already serving. That makes you less exposed when one of those current clients decides to go to a competitor, because you've got a robust pipeline right behind those existing client relationships that can come in and backfill and help you grow your book of business. Now, one of the other interesting dimensions about this, when you interview activators, they will tell you that they believe that business development is not a separate thing. It is part and parcel of their job as partners. In fact, most of them tell us that this makes me a better consultant to my clients when I'm an effective business developer. It helps me understand how they make decisions, how they allocate resources, where they see a potential return on investment in their own business. So it makes me more effective at my core job, which is being a great consultant. Now, that's the commit piece. The second piece is connecting. We mentioned before, activators are super connectors. They connect on multiple dimensions. They're building robust networks through LinkedIn, through physical events, right? And then harvesting from those networks. So they're kind of building their own top of the funnel from which they can harvest business opportunity. But they're also building robust connections in their own firms. Again, they don't hoard relationships. They build connections across the firm to try to create those sticky relationships. That's really important in today's day and age, where clients want to just go with a competitor, a boutique or niche provider, when they've used you in the past. The door is always open to your competitors, as clients have told us. And having multiple points of connection with the client makes for a more resilient, a stickier relationship that, again, the client thinks twice before severing. The last piece, the create pillar, this is all about being proactive. So activators don't wait for the phone to ring. They don't wait for that form to be filled out on the firm's website. They don't wait for that inbound lead from marketing. What they do is they bring ideas to people in their networks, those ideas that they know their clients didn't have time to find on their own. They bring those new ideas about ways to save money and make money and mitigate risk. And then they pay it forward by delivering a bit of free advice, right? Giving the client a chance to kick the tires on their skills and earn some goodwill, even if that piece of business goes through RFP or becomes a competitive bid. They know they've got a leg up because they're the ones who paid it forward with some free advice, and they surface that idea for the client. All the other firms were just responding to the client's established demand versus creating demand, if you will. One last thing here. As we think about this, and this is a place that I know, Karen, you'll have a point of view on, activator is not just about partner capabilities, it's about firm capabilities, right? We know that there are activator firms out there. There are firms who have a spike or a larger number of activators, if you will, than the typical firm. When we talk to the firm leaders there, we find that they really think about creating an ecosystem in which activators can thrive. And they do this through three different dimensions. The first one is how they think about development. So they aren't training and coaching their partners and associates on everything. They're training them and coaching them specifically on the things they know will lead to greater business development outcomes, building a robust network, learning to leverage that network, developing a metronomic cadence around business development, a sense of resiliency and a routine, and also this idea of being proactive. Don't wait for the phone to ring. Surface and scour the news and bring those ideas to your clients. Secondly, they try to enable their partners. They don't want their firms to be fighting what great activators do. Instead, they want to equip their activators with the tools and technology, with the right content marketing, thought leadership, the right event marketing, the right BD team support, so that it enables activators to do what they do naturally. It provides them a platform off of which to go activate and generate business. And then lastly, and this is a hot button one, is the cultural question. So these firm leaders in these activator firms know that there is a lot that happens in the way we pay our partners, in the non-monetary rewards and recognition and signals we send to the partnership that tell at the very early ages in somebody's career, early stages as an associate, what we value and what we think is important. And so you have to think really critically about how you incentivize, how you reward, how you build your culture so that it nudges your partners to be activators, not to be relationship hoarders or to be reactive order takers like experts, right? And those signals are absolutely critical. And so these firms think differently about how they compensate. They think differently about how they send those signals, how they reward and celebrate performance internally to create that nudge for all their partners. So that's about the fastest I can go through it. So I think I've left enough time, hopefully, for us to have a good discussion. Angie, I'm going to go to you and I'll let you kick things off here. I'm going to take a drink of water and a breath, and then we'll go from here.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt. All right. Well, thanks to you for sharing a little bit more of the research, the why, the how, and I love the firm discussion because I'm sure we'll also get into that with Tom. So let's pop Tom, Karen, back all of us on the screen again. We're going to keep this like a fireside chat, and I will ping some questions to you that we had pre-submitted. So Tom, if you don't mind, I'll start with you. You were obviously profiled in the HBR piece. You're clearly running an activator playbook. So can you tell us, have you always taken this kind of BD approach, and also how and when you figured out there was a more effective playbook than, maybe the old Tom or the prior Tom?
Yeah, so I don't think I've always been doing this sort of thing. That is true. The funny thing is, until we'd done this bit of research earlier, I'd never really thought about it, and I really hadn't. I'd never taken the time to sit back. Looking back on it, it comes back to a pivotal moment in my life when my dad died. Okay, this is back in 2003, so it's 20 odd years ago. And I never thought he got poorly. He had leukemia. I never thought he wouldn't get better, and he didn't. And at the time I was working for L'Oreal, I was working really hard and not getting a massive amount of cash back. And I can say this because it was 20 odd years ago. And I decided at that point that if I was going to work that hard, I'd work for myself and I would go for it and I'd take the plunge. And I went off and I did some rather different stuff. And at that point, I realized that I really enjoyed the chase. I really enjoyed this kind of hunt, this making things happen. If something went well, there's only one person to congratulate. If something went badly, there's not far to look in, the mirror right there, and that's that. So I figured out quite early on that within, I can operate within the corporate systems, right? No problem at all. But I'm very good at kind of sailing quite close to the edge of what's kind of considered to be the normal way of working in that sort of space. So I've been doing it for let's say 20 odd years and actively chasing down, hunting things out, making things happen. I've got a reputation for making things happen and dragging people into situations. My T, I know lots of people talk about your T. My T is very, very wide and extraordinarily shallow. Okay. And that means I'm dangerous in lots of spaces, but I also know where my talent runs out. So I can then grab the right person, the right expert to go and talk about offshore wind or green steel or whatever it happens to be, to then give the client or the person I'm talking to the best opportunities to take something forward. So I'm very, very good at that, is knowing where my talent runs out. It's pretty quickly, right? It's not too far reaching. I suppose within kind of rules and regulations as well, I'm quite comfortable in uncomfortable situations, if that makes any sense. I don't mind being thrown into conversations that I don't know much about. I don't mind being thrown into a room full of strangers and being told to go and network and find, business opportunities. I think this isn't going to blow up in my face. I do. I have a business card in my pocket, right? I'm a
Wow.
little old school. I quite like it. It doesn't mean I go and bust the rules up and like run roughshod over stuff. It means I'm just comfortable with it, and that's good because I suppose in teams you need all kinds of personality types, diversity of thought, diversity of everything to make the best result. And I'm just one of the people that you'd probably send in cannon fodder or whatever, to go in and find out is there something here, is there not? But yeah, I suppose it's 20 years ago that I started doing it. Now I've looked back thanks to the work Matt and Karen and the team have been doing. And I find it's just more fun, right? I'm not going to sit back and wait for stuff to happen, because if I sat back and wait for stuff to happen, I would starve. So I find it's more fun to get out there and just like Matt's already talked about, give to get, and
Right.
find out what's going to sort of make someone's antennae sort of flash. So there's a hook here somewhere, and I'll dive into that.
Great. Okay, I love it. This actually dovetails nicely into the question to you, Karen. It sounds like, though, Tom is an activator. Maybe 20 years ago he became one, but he is a natural activator. So, Karen, can you maybe talk about what you've seen from the research? Is it possible for a non-activator to become an activator if you're not, for example, Tom's profile?
I love that question, and partly because there's a very short answer in many ways. Absolutely, right? As Matt mentioned earlier, while there are some folks who kind of naturally find it on their way or have a personality that just lovely dovetails in with the activator behaviors and makes them feel very natural. The research was not about personality, right? It was activities, mindsets, behaviors that people that happen to come together in this profile. And to me, one of the best things about that chart that Matt showed with the lines going up for the activator is not only that it shows you that performance improves the more you look like an activator, but also that performance improves even with a small amount of taking on activator attributes, behaviors, mindsets, and so on. You don't have to be 100% an activator to start to see some improvement from those approaches, which I think can be really reassuring for folks. And for organizations, because we sometimes get the other side of the question, right? We can't possibly have a firm that's entirely filled with activators. Who should we teach to be an activator? And I think the data similarly shows us it's not like an on or off switch, right? It's not you're either an activator or you're not. Just by acting a little bit more like an activator, increasing your commitment day to day, building your connections into kind of more of a cohesive network, being more proactive in how you create value for your clients, that makes you better, even if you don't go all the way to the archetype of a activator profile.
I think you're right, Karen. I think it is totally coachable. I've been coached, and I'm going to name drop him because he's a superstar. Alex Lowe, right? He's helped me enormously. He's helped me out with lots of tips and tricks. And genuinely, like the first tab on my browser is LinkedIn. Second tab on my browser is LinkedIn Sales Nav. Right. And then it's other stuff, whatever else is there. But it's the one thing, if I go on holiday, I shut off all my emails, all my Teams, Slack, everything's gone. I'm not interested, right? It's not a holiday if someone's always at you. Mm-hmm. I need that mental space. But I will check LinkedIn. I will still see what's going on. I will still go through this. I will comment. I will I will chit chat and interact. Even on my holiday time. Because I find it really interesting, and it's been coached into me a little. I'm a willing student, right? That's fine, but Alex has helped me out an awful lot with that, and has helped drill it in and help me to understand what's the best way of doing this sort of things. I think people will naturally think, oh yeah, activator must be extrovert, must be this, must be that, right? I did a personality test thing at one of my last firms. It came out very strong on this pioneer sort of mindset. So strong, I was made to redo it, and I came out even stronger. And they said, "No, it can't be possible. You shouldn't be in this firm." And and it doesn't. It's not necessarily about the extrovert. That you can coach it, you can do it. It just needs a little bit of dedication, and it's not that much effort. I'm sure of it.
Yeah, I was
It's
going to
funny how
actually
many.
ask.
Oh,
Oh,
sorry. I was
sorry.
just going to say, so many times in our programs, people have said, "I'm an introvert," and it's exactly that. And then half of them turn out to really just shine to those activator behaviors. Go ahead, Angela.
Right. Yeah, no, I was going to ask Tom, what was, maybe if it was looking back 20 years ago, or even maybe something recently, give us an example of a behavior that you took, that small change that Karen mentioned. It could be like the time to do business, like time to carve out business development, but something you think really started to move the needle.
So I get told off, right, by my wife that she said, "You're always on bloody duty. You're always trying to do something for work, right? You're always even like at the new parent drinks the other night for my kids' school. I found a potential link up there for work. Okay, it's just the way I'm wired, I suppose. But we've started to get more intentional about how I'm interacting on these platforms. So a lot of stuff I put on LinkedIn is coming from the heart, right? I see something, I put it out there because it interests me. And I don't tend to think about it too much. I tend to just put it out there. But when we've been chasing or a potential opportunity with a client, in particular recently around a sustainable packaging opportunity, I get the team together. So, look, we've got this thing. We don't. Everything's a must win. Like, oh, must win, must win. I never go. No one goes into these opportunities thinking, I tell you what, let's come second. That'll be great. You go into this thing and we say, right, what can we do that's really intentional about this? Well, let's put out some content around circularity, sustainability, our packaging sort of capabilities. Not that many people know that PA is famous for building things, physical things. We've got a 10,000 square meter lab, right, that not that many people know about. It's cool. How do we get that message to the right people? So the whole team starts to talk about this sort of stuff on LinkedIn. We start commenting on the buyers and the people in the other firms' posts and activities. So we're flashing up, we're becoming in and around their sphere. So when stuff drops through, they go, "Yeah, I saw that thing." I kind of liken it a bit to the hypnotist here, Darren Brown. If you ever go and see this guy in the theater, he's starting to mess with your head before you even get there. The ticket, the music, the scent, the stuff that's around the stage, all this kind of thing. So if you're susceptible to it, he's kind of got you already. I'm not saying we're hypnotizing people, but what I am saying is that we have started to become way, way more intentional. And that's the real key word here about how we're putting stuff out there. I still do the other stuff, right? I still put out things about, people not picking up their litter after music festivals, which really annoys me. And and talking about prostate cancer in men and mental health and things like that on LinkedIn, because that's still important. But when you want to really nail down on an opportunity, being intent, think about the person, right? What do they care about? What will make them famous? What's going to tick their boxes? And then start to put out the right kind of content. For instance, around if we'd started talking about artificial intelligence and all the great work we're doing there, I don't care. Right? They're after sustainable packaging. Honestly, artificial intelligence can do one. I want to know what you're doing about circularity and sustainable packaging, and that's the key. So it's being really understanding what that person wants, not what the company wants, what that person are actually interested in. Because otherwise, you might as well just whistle in the wind. It's going to go nowhere.
Yeah, I love the piece about being intentional and then obviously keeping the individual in mind, right? Like being customer centric, client centric in that sense of, we forget to be human, right? Like understand what the person cares about and then being able to curate on your own, right? Like what the messaging or a like or a post itself. So tell us a little bit more. I know you talked about Navigator as up on your screen, and I love that as one of the top two. What is one thing that you can't live without on Navigator as part of your daily routine?
Oh God, I don't know. There's tons of little angles around it. I think it's amazingly useful for finding the right person, right? And what do I mean by that? I think sometimes when we're talking about opportunities, okay, so here's a good example. I have an idea about something. Generally, a lot of my ideas are rubbish, but that's okay. Some of them are actually quite good. but I want to find the right person to go and talk to about, let's say, building energy optimization in a certain environment. How the hell do I find that person? So it's the I can go in and I can find that the right individual within a firm, and then I can use the team link function to work out who in my team knows that person. And then I go and talk to that person, say, hey, look, Joey, I want to talk to Elizabeth. Do you know her? Can you introduce me? They'll either say yes or no. And if they say yes, great, let's crack on. If they say no, I'll find another way. But I think it's that unbelievable ability to be able to find the right person. And I'm not saying, that's going to get you through the door and make things like all like plain sailing. You've still got to have the right sort of conversation to have and the right interest markers and all that kind of good stuff. But that's half the battle, getting to that right person with the right message, right? So I think that team link function is genius, really. It really does help.
Yeah, making your network transparent, right? Without doing it the hard way.
Hey, Angelica,
Karen,
can I jump in
yeah,
real quick on, there's one thing that Tom said before that I don't want to lose sight of. This is a really important point. We talked about, so there's an element in the research that we didn't really get to today. We certainly get to it in our program. We get to it in the book, which Karen and I are working on, and we're going to be working on right after this recording is over. And we talk about the dimensions of value. So I talked about this idea of creating opportunity, right? Being proactive, no waiting for the phone to ring, but being intentional, being proactive. But there was something that Tom said that was really important. And we saw it reflected in the research too. It came out in the interviews, actually, not in the survey, because we weren't necessarily testing for it. We're kind of dabbling around the edges, but it really came through loud and clear when we interviewed activators, where they talked about the specific kind of value they're looking to deliver. And we came up with this framework, pretty simple, but most partners in professional services would think about value delivered to a client in 3 dimensions. The first one being business value. Are we helping them achieve the business outcomes that are important for them? Making money, saving money, mitigating risk, increasing sustainability, et cetera. The second one is delivering what we call trust value, right? Are we doing it on time, on budget, reliably, ethically, responsibly, all those things? Those 2, I would say, are pretty consistent across all 5 of the profiles. And I might even argue in today's professional services environment, if you're not at least doing that, you're finding another job, right? You're not going to be worth your salt as an advisor or as a partner. The thing that separates activators is this third dimension, which we call personal value. So yes, absolutely, the business value, the trust value have to be spot on. But what's the personal value for this individual? And I think, what Tom was talking about before is, this person has a personal, their name is on the, they've put their badge on the table, said they're going to solve for sustainable packaging in their business. We can help them with that. That solves a problem for them. It helps improve their own, perception, opportunities for advancement, next career opportunity, et cetera. But the activator is always looking for that personal dimension. I'll give you a real simple example here. A lot of the partners we talk to will tell us, I love reaching out. Yeah, I love monitoring my LinkedIn, my sales nav, and seeing when a client has switched roles. Maybe they've taken on a new role in their company, switched industries perhaps, or switched companies. But what most of them will do is reach out and say, hey, Angelica, saw you took a new job. We should catch up for a coffee, or we should hop on a Teams or a Zoom, right? It's just this empty kind of check-in. And clients see right through that. They see in that a desire to just troll for new business, because I know you've got a new job and you might need some help. But what activators will do, will look for the personal value add. So they might say, Angelique, I noticed you just switched from technology into biotech, which is a new industry. I've got deep connections there. I'd love to put you in touch with some of the folks I know who can be great connections for you, help you get down the learning curve effectively as a new executive in that industry, learning the ins and outs of that industry. I would love to establish that connection for you. So it's more than just what I think I can do for you from a business and trust standpoint, but what would be personally valuable for you? And another thing Tom said, which I think is brilliant, is it's not always about me providing the expertise. It's often about me being a general contractor for that expertise, right? Where else in my network or in my firm across the different departments or organization might I be able to bring some expertise to bear? I might not deliver it personally, but I can bring that connection forth so that you get value out of it.
Yeah, and I don't think as well, this has to be. Oh, sorry. I was going to say, it doesn't have to be limited to the partner level either. Right? Anyone can do this.
Sure.
Junior ranks can talk to the other folks that they're working with. So, right, what's going on in your firm? And they can open doors at the same time. I think it's just about having that kind of mindset to say, you know, I can do it as well. It's all good. Sorry, Karen, I jumped right in.
No. I think just to add to that, right? Like if you say what would you do as a trying to adopt some activator behaviors, and along those same lines, I would add to what you said earlier, Tom, around kind of your LinkedIn behavior on the day-to-day basis, and suggest that everyone just kind of keep a tracker of your network and your activity within that network. When I hear you know, we do these coaching sessions after our training, the number one thing that people say to me afterwards is, I think it's only been a couple of days or maybe a week or so since I talked to someone, and it turns out actually it's been 2 months. Yeah. Right? Like I didn't even realize it. So being able to, you know, Sales Navigator certainly makes this very easy to keep those lead lists or whatever it is to remind you of the network activity that you've had and need to have, but just kind of keeping a system, which is what so many of our activators do, to say, who do you need to reach out to this week? So you can spend less time reminding yourself who to talk to, and more customizing that reach out. So it's not an empty check-in. It's as Matt mentioned, it's a value-led interaction. That would be the thing that I would say is kind of a just do it for any activator, along the same lines of what you said, Tom.
Love it. And in true fashion, I got kicked out of a room and had to move to another. So that's why I have a different background. But I knew we would go over. This is great information. Just a little bit of a deep dive into the consulting subsector. For more information, please check out the HBR article from DCM Insights on what the top rainmakers are doing differently. Also, leverage Sales Navigator, great resources. I think Tom mentioned Alex Lowe traditionally posts research on the consulting subsector, how he's taken his former role in consulting and how he now applies best activator top practices with DCM Insights. So thank you to all of our panelists, Matt, Karen, and Tom. Thank you everyone for joining, and more talk later.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Take care.